Now, the president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari's administration, has actually unveiled the shape of the first national budget under the APC government, and it's quite an ambitious one. The country may be going through a severe cash crunch, at the moment. No thanks, of course, to the sustained fall in oil prices. But the government says it plans to spend 6 trillion naira next year. Now, take a listen to the Minister of National Budget and Planning, Udoma, break things down.
We project and we're working with a $38 crude oil price. We consider that to be very conservative, but because of the uncertainties, we feel that we should start with a conservative crude oil price. We also are working with 2.2 million barrels a day production. We believe it is achievable, particularly because with the passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill, which we are working to achieve, we believe that that is actually a modest figure, that we should be able to produce something higher than that. And so next year, we're looking at an expansionist budget. We're looking at a budget that will be 1 trillion naira more than last year. So we're looking at a budget of about 6 trillion. Last year's budget, including the supplementary, was about 5 trillion. So we're looking at a 6 trillion budget. Most of the increases, all the increases actually, will be spent on capital, because there is a need to increase the capital spend because of our infrastructure issues that we have to address.
Now, when you consider the fact that state governments across the country are struggling to pay salaries as a result of depleted allocations from the federal government, and that the federal government itself recently borrowed to finance the 2015 supplementary budget, as well as the outlook for oil price now next year not looking good at all, the question you want to ask is just where does the government hope to get the money from? That's the 6 trillion naira it's talking about. Again, take a listen to the Minister of National Budget and Planning, Udoma, explain.
We're looking at trying to get increasing our non-oil revenue. We're looking at trying to get more money from the government, various government agencies, policing their collection and trying to get more money from them. We'll also look at keeping down our recurrent budget. That means that we'll look at savings that we can make from overheads. We'll also look at efficiencies from our revenue collecting agencies, the FIRS, in terms of companies' income tax, in terms of VAT. And then the difference we will have to borrow. But the level of borrowing that we anticipate and we are projecting will be well within the maximum that we are allowed, which is 3% of GDP. We're well within 3% of GDP.
Well, joining me now to crunch those figures and help us make sense of the 6 trillion naira budget is the chairman of the African Center for Business Development, Sam Ohuabunwa. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on the program. Let me start by asking you what you make of the idea of, borrowing to fund the budget. We had the Minister of National Budget and Planning there explain how the government intends to fund this 6 trillion naira budget.
Well, I believe, DEJI, that it's not a sin, to borrow to fund the budget. That's why we allow deficit in every budget. But the truth of the matter is, what are you borrowing to do with the money? In this budget, there's a very high level of recurrent expenditure, which is about 2/3 of the budget is recurrent. capital is only one quarter or so, or to one third. And we'll believe that even though that's an improvement over what had happened in the last couple of years, there's still a high level of consumption in the budget. And therefore, the ability to pay back when the money is due is the challenge. But looking at it again from the point of trying to stimulate the economy, then maybe there could be some justification that some quantum amount of money has to be poured into the economy to stimulate the economy. But I wish that that money is directed to promote production and creation of wealth. That way it will be worth the effort and then the dangers inherent in borrowing.
Let's look at the sheer size of the budget itself. 6 trillion naira, that's a lot. In your opinion now, I mean, what do you think it would do for the economy? For instance, we had the Minister of National Budget and Planning say there that the government intends to spend 30% of the budget on infrastructure, capital projects, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I think that, the size of the budget is staggering in the first place, because you're wondering how the economy that we haven't sufficiently even spent 4 trillion can accommodate 6 trillion. So the absorptive capacity of the economy is an issue. The other is, the regularity of the phasing of the releases. Because as you know, DEJI, in the past we've had big plans to spend both capital and especially the capital side, because the current is always met on target. But the capital is always falling behind because of delay in releases. Priority is given to meeting recurrent expenditure, and if there's no cash backing, then nothing happens in the capital area. So assuming that we'll have the funding at the appropriate time, both the locally generated fund and the one coming from the borrowing from the banks or wherever we'll get the money, if that money is released on schedule, to be able to fund a capital project, then that will be helpful. But I'm afraid, looking at our history, that might not be the case. We shall end up spending all the money on recurrent, and then we come home with nothing to show on infrastructure side. Also, that it takes time to fulfill infrastructure projects through the period of project conceptualization, through the processes of due process of procurement and the mobilization. The year is far gone. So I just hope we can actually put the money in the right place.
I want us now to look at the benchmark itself, the budget benchmark for oil now, $38 per barrel. And of course, you take a look at the global oil market, not doing well at all. As a matter of fact, just some days ago, the price of oil fell down to as low as $38 per barrel. Do you think we're being too optimistic here by benchmarking $38 per barrel?
I believe that at $8 per barrel, it's if you like me, say optimistically realistic. I want to use that word because it makes sense to be optimistic somehow. But looking at where we're coming from, that looks reasonable. But the current pressures that we have seen in the global oil market makes that forecast unrealistic. But then that's a forecast all the same. The question is, how do we see 2016 playing out? What are those things that will drive the hydrocarbon market? What is happening to shale oil production in the United States? What is going to happen to China? Are they going to ramp up productions? They have slowed down their GDP growth that had been running on double digit for a number of years to coming to about single digit now. And their economic philosophy is a little bit changed to promoting domestic consumption. So so the export trade may be a little bit not as fast as it used to. I mean, I'm using China as one of those guys who got global oil for production. So are they going to up their production next year? if they would, and the Americans are going to be at some pressure to manage the cost of the shale oil, then we might hope that this benchmark might be realized. But otherwise, the current pressures are frightening, and you never know how low it can go. But we must have an optimistic outlook, because that's the only way to keep life going.
There's something I want us to talk about as well, and of course, it's been the buzz in this country. The government budgeting 500 billion naira now for social welfare. Of course, as you know, the government plans to give youth corps members some kind of allowance, 5,000, we've been told, 5,000 naira non-employment allowance. What do you make of that?
Well, to be sincere to you, I do know that payouts is not a sustainable economic option, where you pay out to people jobless allowances. Many countries are walking away from welfare and such social security issues. But I want to tell you that I have a soft spot for this. Because I work right now in my NGO, Samoa Abunwa Foundation for Economic Empowerment, and in many of the areas that I work in, even in African Center for Business Development, we do we do see the reality of poverty, we see reality of unemployment. And I tell you that 5,000 is a lot of money to many of these people. So as a short-term interventionist measure to calm nerves, to give some hope to these young people, I would reluctantly vote for it. It's not something economically justified, but you see, we don't operate in a vacuum. An economic imperative may be relevant or irrelevant at different points. I think at this time, with the high expectations from this government, if they can even spend that money and let people get value from it, isn't it better than it's being misused? The way we see things seem to have happened or happening, where somebody else has control and then dishes this money to political parties and political agents. I think it's better we give it to Nigerian youths and Nigerian women and the poor. Let them have something. In fact, my proposition is that even the food they are thinking about giving children a meal per day or so in some schools, I have suggested that they should give them cash because the contract of producing foods will consume a lot in administrative costs. Let them share the money to the parents or to the schools. I believe it will yield more benefit than even trying to operate the food supply through contract system.
No, I think there's a lot of sense there because, as you said, I mean, the contract itself or the preparation of that food could just result in another round of corruption. You just never can tell. But let's turn our attention now to the issue of subsidy. Not provided, the government seemingly silent on the issue of subsidy. You know, in the budget, we didn't see the government making provisions as such. And we've heard that there's a likelihood that the government might just remove it by next year. We don't know. The government has not actually come out plainly, you know, on what it intends to do with subsidy. And now, when you look at how much we're spending on subsidy alone this year, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources actually confirmed that we're spending about 1 trillion naira for subsidy alone this year. We don't know what that figure will be next year if the government decides to retain it. Don't you think the government should remove subsidy right now, as the World Bank has suggested that, look, it's not sustainable?
Well, I have personally made these points in the last 2-3 years. I've been pushing for it in all my writings, in my postings. I have said Nigeria was wasting money. In fact, I called it double jeopardy because in my experience in the last 2-3 years, we were just wasting money. We were paying subsidy. And for most of us who travel regularly on the road, we are buying fuel at the deregulated prices. The moment you go outside Abuja or Lagos, especially in the part of the country I come from the east, they have long deregulated. Every filling station is selling at its own price. And that's why you have supply regularly in the east, except you went to an NNPC stations and then you queue for days. It didn't make sense for the country to use the money they used to build roads and schools and hospitals to say they are subsidizing, and at the end of the day, majority of the people still pay the market prices. So I think the earlier we ended with this subsidy, the better for us. And one of my greatest surprises is that President Muhammadu Buhari has been ambivalent about this. I thought it was one of the first things he will have done. Not only will he save money for the nation, 1 trillion is 25% of our total budget for 2015. But it's from all the stories we've had, this is one of the cesspools of corruption in the country. Why would we retain something that has the potential to corrupt? And we're saying anti-corruption is a major focus. So I'm tired of speaking about this, and I said I wasn't going to say anything more about it because the economic imperative will force the government to behave well. I'm beginning to think that the change of position we're hearing may be the influence of the ministers who have shown him the true picture that it doesn't make sense. It's not really beneficial to anybody, not even to the common man, whom I think he has soft support for. The common man outside Lagos, where they live, are paying the correct market prices. So I believe it's something they just have to do. The longer they waited, the more difficult it became and the more the hemorrhage on our national purse.
But if you were advising government now, how would you advise the government to deal with the labor unions who continue to insist that subsidy must remain? It's a very big headache for the government, no doubt, to convince labor, to let go and not, because labor has been insisting that, look, subsidy should stay and should not be removed.
Well, I've had encounter with labor right from the days when Adams Oshomole was president of NLC and I was chairman of NESG and president of NECA. We have had arguments both in Nigeria and outside the country on this. And at some point, I began to see that a number of them were becoming reasonable. People like Peter Sele, I had when he was TUC chairman, we had agreement, and he saw my point that it was not beneficial for the country. I believe that any labor man or whatever that is still in ignorance or in denial of the hemorrhage and of the difficulty the country is facing, that labor leader is unpatriotic and is unrealistic and is living in the past. So I think that government should go ahead and take away the subsidy. I think the Nigerian people will counter the labor because most Nigerians want this deregulation and they want ease of purchase. They are tired of sleeping in filling stations and losing man hours while queuing for so-called cheap oil. So I think the labor will rather, I believe that government should engage them. I've always preached engagement and try to convince them, but that shouldn't be a reason not to move on with the decision. I think the government should take that decision latest 1st of January and engage labor in the process. We've passed through this step several times in the past, and we need to bite the bullet once and for all. I don't think heaven will fall.
Just finally, before I let you go, sir, what's your own forecast for the economy next year? I mean, it's been a very difficult 2015 for the Nigerian economy. You take a look at 2016. What would be your forecast?
Well, for me, first of all, the global economy. How is the global economy looking at? I think that with some of the things some stability that we're finding in Europe. Greece seems to be beginning to take care of its challenges. We can see the United States economy showing improved growth. I also believe that China and the southeast area will remain stable. I pursue that if this country is able to do what kind of things he's doing, more efficient utilization of his resources, fight against corruption so that much of the money that comes in is used appropriately. I believe that 6 trillion naira from the private sector, the public sector, should stimulate activity. And if these governments will try to take the advice we give all the time, to spend a lot of energy looking on how to incentivize the private sector, how to remove the obstacles, how to make Nigeria investment friendly. Nigeria seems to be a natural and almost compulsive investment destination. And all we need to do is to get our acts together. I believe that President Buhari looks a serious person. If he will give some space to his economic advisors to direct the flow of economic policies and activities, harmonize the monetary and fiscal policies, and sustain the rule of law, I think Nigeria will begin to receive investment capital. And in 2016, we do hope that it will be better than 2015. That's my forecast. Certainly, the GDP will be beyond 3-4%. That's the area I'm looking. There should be some growth. It may not be wonderful, but it will not be as bad as 2015 in my own estimation.
All right, Mr. Samuel Huavungwa, Chairman, African Center for Business Development. Thank you very much for talking to us on DEJI360. Well, just before we go, we still want to bring you one more thing, and that is what Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka had to say about illegal detentions in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, he basically took an aim at security agencies and called for an end to illegal detentions. Let's take a listen to what he said recently at an event.
Let's put an end to unlawful detention. Either we're running a democracy or we're not. There's nothing called a half democracy. If the courts grant an individual bail, I don't care what crime that individual is accused of. There are many avenues for security agencies to pursue their quest without flouting the orders of the court. It is wrong, and we dare not continue to keep silent when one of us, a citizen of this nation, whether militarized or civilianized, is granted bail by the court, and some excuse is found for flouting the orders of the court. Those who do that are behaving exactly like Fayose, that thug in Ekiti, who went to court, beat up the judges, tore their clothes, and got away with it. I see no difference between Fayose and any police agency which flouts orders of the court. You're treating that court with contempt, and that is the one arbitration avenue that belongs to all of us. We have a duty to protect the courts, and we must put an end to this contempt of orders of the court by any government.
Well, let's wait and see if Governor Ayo Fayose would have anything to say to that beat where the Nobel laureate referred to him as a thug. Well, that's it on the program. If you want to watch it again, it's simple. All you just need to do is go to our website, tv360nigeria.com. You'll find the program and lots more there. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TV360 Nigeria. Do subscribe to get latest videos and updates. You can follow us on Google Plus at TV360 Nigeria, and or just like us on Facebook. Actually, the address is facebook.com/TV360 online. You can also follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @TV360 online. We thank you very much for watching. We're back again next week. See you then.